You know, each woodturner is a unique individual, but all of us got one thing in common. We'll grow older and may not be able to keep turning, or we pass on, sometimes unexpectedly, leaving someone to deal with our shop and tools. You know, Highland Woodturner's got this funny bumper sticker that says, "He who dies with the most tools wins." My friend Frank was always wearing a hat with that logo. He was active as a teacher at Woodcraft and as a club demonstrator in our region. Frank was on the club calendar to do a demo when he passed away unexpectedly at the age of 80 with complications from a heart attack. Well, you can't take tools with you. As one person commented, "I never saw a hearse pulling a U-Haul." I assisted a widow sort out her husband's shop after he died of COVID. He had an extensive shop and made no advance arrangements. He was a long-time member of my club, and his widow called for help. These kinds of experiences remind me of our mortality and should encourage us to think about how our shop is going to be dealt with. Let's explore some options in case you're no longer around to close up your shop for the last time. Much of this is also relative to those who choose to or must give up wood turning for health reasons. Procrastination is common when it comes to dealing with something we don't want to deal with, isn't it? But I want to share a belief that we should plan to lessen the burden on the loved ones that we leave behind. We fall into different categories as turners. Perhaps we no longer turn due to health reasons, although we wish we could. I had an active viewer in another state who sent me this cross and suggested that it is a video project, which I later did. Later, he bought a new pyromatic lathe through my Amazon shop, for which I received a commission as an affiliate marketer. Unfortunately, he had a reoccurrence of cancer, and with his little time left, was even too weak to speak on the telephone. His brother was handling his affairs and reached out to me to ask about how we could sell that big pyromatic. I was able to provide him contact information to several clubs within a couple of hours drive, and I'm sure they were able to sell that thing to somebody for a very reasonable price. Another category of wood turners are those who no longer have an interest in actually standing at a lathe and turning. They may not have turned in years, and I see this in a number of club members who are what I call inactive hobbyists. They may still come to club meetings for social reasons or to get away from their spouse for a while. They may still have an interest in watching someone else turn wood, or they just want to hang out with friends and fellow woodturners and talk about wood turning. If you fall in one of these categories, you may be capable of disposing of your shop by yourself or with some assistance. If you're in one of these two categories, consider working to clean up or clean out your shop now while you can. At least deal with the low-hanging fruit, such as getting rid of wood that's just too cracked for turning. The boxes of extra bowls and platters and projects that you've started but haven't finished. Finish projects in excess of the needs to display around the house. Give them to friends and family or donate to a charity. And another category is old finishes, and dispose of them responsibly. It's best now to go ahead and sell or give away what you can and throw away the rest. Third category of turners, and one that I fall into, and I suspect most of you fall into as well, are those that are still turning. Here are the actions we can take now. We can take time to go through our shop and identify anything that hasn't been used in more than a year and consider getting rid of it. Getting rid of it may mean selling it, or it may mean taking it out to the trash for odds and ends that have accumulated and really have no value. Take any wood in excess of your needs to a club for a raffle if you belong to a club. Don't take firewood. No one wants to bother with old cracked wood that you would not turn. Get rid of old magazines that typically have no dollar value. Perhaps taking a few to a club for pickup by a new turner. An old American Woodturner magazine might provide a new turner with information about the American Association of Woodturner and what it's about, and it could be useful luring them in as a new member. Perhaps you can throw in magazines as sizzle to some tool or equipment you might sell to someone. And then if you're able to give it away, it's one less item that you're having to carry out to the trash or to the recycle bin. Now, turning DVDs probably fall into this category. If your club's got a library, perhaps they may want your old DVD, but most clubs have abandoned libraries as there's little interest in them. Turning VHS tapes, hey, forget about it. Do you even have a VHS player? Throw those in the trash with your old magazines. But most important, prepare a written plan to assist that person's going to be left with the task of cleaning out our shop when we're no longer able. It's possible that your residents will go on the market in a workshop full of equipment, wood, and tools that's not going to help you get it help somebody sell it. It's just going to be a barrier. Document the tools in your shop and leave a printed list where it can easily be found, both in your shop and with your will. You do have a will, right? If not, quit watching this video and go take care of that, because that's a higher priority. Determine if you want tools to be given to a specific family member, a friend, or an organization. If so, confirm with them that they actually do want to receive the tools. Then communicate the intent to all concerned parties, both verbally and in writing. If you want to donate the tools to a qualified charitable organization in the U.S., such as the local Woodturning Guild, that has been officially approved as a nonprofit under the provision of Section 501C of the IRS tax code, the estate may qualify for a tax deduction. Charitable deductions are subtracted from the gross estate before the tax rate's applied, but few of us are going to have an estate that large. But if your widow or surviving spouse donates it, they can get a deduction on their individual tax return. Determine if you want tools to be given to a specific family member or friend or an organization. And if so, do confirm with them that they actually do want to receive the tools. Then communicate this intention to all concerned parties, both verbally and in writing. If you decide to donate the tools to a charitable organization in the U.S., such as a local Woodturning Guild that has been officially approved as a nonprofit under the provision of Section 501C of the IRS tax code, the estate may qualify for a tax deduction. Charitable deductions are subtracted from the gross estate before the estate tax rate is applied. But few of us are going to have an estate that large that can be subject to an estate tax. But the same issue applies. Your widow or surviving spouse could donate to a qualified nonprofit and get a charitable deduction. However, in recent years, tax laws have made standard deductions so large that it might not even make a difference whether they get a deduction or not. So a tax deduction donation may be a little tax benefit unless the donations are worth a great deal of money or you have significant other qualified deductions. I would suggest that you get the advice from a qualified tax advisor on details. Now, a strategy that's often used in the case of a person suffering from a terminal illness is determine if you want to have the tools sold or given to a specific person or group after your death. And if so, you can negotiate the sales price and communicate this intention to all concerned, both verbally and in writing. And in this case, the documentation should also include the agreed upon sales price. If there are no family members or friends interested in the tools, then you got to plan the method for their disposal. And this could include any of the following. You could use a professional online auction service if you feel like that they'll sell them in a manner that meets with your approval. Be sure to discuss the cost of this service and all the terms and conditions, because these services can easily cost 30 to 40% of the proceeds, but it still may be worth it. We had a retired physician who did turning in addition to general woodworking, and left a very well-equipped shop with the highest quality of tools, and she left the shop to her favorite club, which used a professional auction service, and the club netted more than $25,000 from the sale. Next possibility is identify a knowledgeable and trusted friend who might be able to help. The help can vary in scope from a few hours consultation and hand-holding. This type of consultation can be to help organize the parts that go together with the system, help with some cataloging, and perhaps provide some pricing resources like a wood-turning vendor catalog like Packard Woodworking or Craft Supply USA or some wood-turning vendor websites. Or they can provide a full service to sell the tools and equipment after your death. This person should be knowledgeable about tool pricing and selling alternatives, and not all turners have this kind of knowledge. The selling process can consume a considerable amount of time, so it can consider providing for maybe 15% of the sale proceeds as a reasonable amount to the individual that's going to be handling this. If a club is providing the service, it would be appropriate for some payment for the club, whether it's in cash or tools and equipment. And then, of course, your options for help could fall between these two extremes, from consulting and hand-holding to full service. Now, after you choose an approach and you document the plan in writing, you should communicate the plan details with your family while you're still alive. You should store this document with your other papers, such as your will, or you could possibly put it in a binder in a prominent place in your shop, and maybe leave a note with your will as to where this reference document is going to be. And this is going to help minimize the stress your family is going to suffer upon your death. Now, some of the different sales venues, well, number one, there's local woodturning clubs, and I'll have a link in the show notes of how you can find those clubs through the American Association of Woodturners. There's social media such as Facebook Marketplace and Nextdoor and Craigslist. The other option is garage or estate sales. Smaller tools that can be easily packed and shipped, such as name brand gouges and or chucks, can often be sold through online turning forum classifieds. But be prepared, as this takes some work and includes packaging to mail and figure out how to to get paid for the shipping costs. I bought this used chuck that way, and I also bought a pair of thread chasers from classifieds on a wood turning forum. I'll have a list of a couple of online forums in the show notes. Another online venue, of course, could be eBay or Craigslist, and then, as I previously mentioned, Facebook Marketplace and Nextdoor. I've sold several pieces of woodworking equipment on Facebook Marketplace. Now, pricing, there's an old joke that your worst fear is that your spouse is going to sell your tools for what you said you paid for them. A general rule of thumb where I live is that 50% of the current retail is a good starting place for many quality tools. In my county, sales tax is 7%, but it could be 8, 9, or 10% where you live. So that obviously makes the used price even more attractive. Some tools may easily go for a higher price, perhaps 60 to 75%. Which might include higher end equipment with cast iron like jointers, table saws, band saws, and lathes. But whoever's handling this should be realistic. Sought after items like chucks would generally fall into this category as well. Now, Amazon is a great tool for pricing, but some items can't be found on Amazon, especially if it's an older item, maybe no longer in manufacture. But you can also check the website for a wood turning vendor like Craft Supplies, Packard, or Woodcraft, and then of course you can always Google that particular model, and you'd be surprised sometimes what you can come up with. If you're in a club or there's one nearby, they'll likely be happy to at least post a classified ad for little or nothing on their chapter website or Facebook page, or in a newsletter, or put it in their email distribution, as most consider this a valuable service for members. When typing up your list, try to describe each item as clearly as possible with a reasonable description to include model numbers, the correct title, and condition. Sometimes providing the current retail price is a useful reference. Now, voltage is important in the USA, where our voltage is 110, but the equipment might require 220 volts, which not all shops are going to have. Providing an asking price will also get a better response. Publish contact information in city locations so you don't waste time on calls from folks too far away to want to drive there to check something out. Publish this document as a PDF if you're expecting it to be distributed by email, because not every computer user is going to have or use Microsoft Word. Be realistic about pricing. I know one club member with health issues who priced his tools and equipment too close to full retail when selling his home to move into assisted living. Took a long time with many price reductions and a hassle and expense of moving things into a storage unit because they had to clear out that house for a sale. Now, let's change gears a little bit. Let's look at the flip side. Let's say someone passed away and you get a call to help out. First, you've got to decide if you're willing to provide the time needed. One turning friend that had considerable experience in this area suggested, in dealing with someone you do not know, consider pricing your assistance at so much an hour for a minimum, maybe 2 hours. And this makes it a business arrangement and may rule out some folks that may be difficult to deal with or have unrealistic expectations. Now, if you get a call to help out cleaning out a woodturner's shop, you've got to decide if you're willing to put in the time needed. One turning friend that had considerable experience in this area suggested if you're dealing with someone you don't know, consider pricing your assistance at so much an hour for a minimum of a couple of hours. This makes it a business arrangement, may rule out some folks that might be difficult to deal with or have unrealistic expectations. He mentioned putting in a situation where he put in a couple of days of assisting someone, organizing things and doing pricing, only to have some family member swoop in with a pickup truck and haul everything off, and all his time was wasted. A minimum upfront charge will at least cover your gas if you've got to drive an hour or two. When dealing with the individual at their site, you can then decide whether you want to donate some or all of your time based on how much time you've got and willing to donate, or what the financial conditions of that surviving spouse might be, or what your relationship was with that individual. Now, one of the biggest value add services to helping to document the items and group things together that should be together. Now, if there are extra chuck jaws, associate them with a chuck. Make sure that the chuck key is associated with the chuck. If it's a lathe, try to gather together all of the original equipment with that lathe. In a recent situation where I was helping out a widow, I found in a back storage room a handle contraption and a set of wheels that were used that needed to be associated with the lathe. Turns out it was a part of a transport mechanism so you could move the lathe around the shop, and it retailed for over $300. And had I not identified what it was, there's a good chance the lathe could have been sold and that stuff just hauled into the dumpster because nobody knew what it was. Manuals are usually available online to help identify what goes together. If there's a buffing system, for example, and put all the accessories together, including the compounds for it. If there's a grinder, associate all the parts of the sharpening system, like the arms, the platform, and the gouge jig, typically a Bear grind here in North America. Another example would be somebody that has a number of carbide cutters in a drawer that are expensive, but the carbide tools are in a rack, and they wouldn't necessarily get associated unless somebody's there to help them. The widow may not have a clue what goes together. Another service is to be in attendance at the garage or yard sale to help deal with customers, answer questions, and help negotiate prices. Many widows would be reluctant to have strangers traipsing through their house and shop. Now, these are just a few of the examples, but I think you get the idea. Let's look at some of the items. Wood, for example. Exotic blanks, bowl blanks, roughed out bowls without cracks, sawn slabs and burls, they have a definite value. Old and dried and cracked wood should be evaluated and determine if it's good only for firewood and clean it out. Turned items. Chances are that the family has already dealt with everything that they want to give away in terms of wood turnings, but that's something to consider. In some instances, clubs might be willing to take those items and sell them or give them away at a event, a Christmas party, raffle, or auction. It's possible that you can take those to a nonprofit organization, your local United Way or whatever, that might have fundraisers, and they may be able to use it appropriately. My club has had some success in selling nice pieces that a wood turner might have turned, who was a wood artist, or their collection included some demo pieces from famous turners that have demonstrated at the club. Places to donate, as I mentioned before, include any organization that has fundraisers, nonprofit, charity organizations, and my local United Way was happy to take some small turnings that I provided and add to baskets that they were auctioning or raffling off or gifting to large donors. Now, another option that's appropriate for some people is that just want the equipment to go away, and that's donating the entire shop. This might be especially useful if the shop is not that large or extensive, or the individual's, the surviving spouse has some means or substance, and they're more concerned with maybe even helping out the local club that their family member might have been a member of for many years. Or time is of the essence, and they're looking at trying to get it cleaned out as soon as possible because they're putting a house on the market. Now, this option may not be real feasible if there's not a a woodworking club in the vicinity. Now, if the club is a 501c organization, they can provide a tax receipt, although, as I mentioned before, nowadays with very high standard deductions, that may not be a big deal, but it might be. Another option is to split the final sales figure in some way. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. It could be 10% to the surviving spouse, or 90%, or somewhere in between, 50-50 maybe. If you're in a club, consider bringing this up to the club leadership as a service that the club could provide. If so, you might need to write down a process, including rules for the volunteers. Some folks have a different idea on what is fair or reasonable, so fence in parameters for integrity. What volunteers can or can't do in terms of maybe doing a side deal, making a low-ball offer to the surviving spouse for a particular tool. I remember one instance. We had an individual, happened to be a physician, who could probably afford to buy most any tool he wanted, and he overheard a conversation before the meeting started about some widow that was trying to sell a Powermatic lathe, and turns out before the club member could go help him out, he swooped in with a lowball offer, half of what the lathe should reasonably go for, and bought it. We never saw him again at a club meeting, as he was a guest, and it's fortunate he never showed up again. Now, these are some of my thoughts based on my experience. I know some of you have had some experience selling tools and equipment and helping others sell tools, so I would welcome any comments or suggestions you have by leaving a comment that might be helpful to those in the community. And y'all remember, y'all stay safe and come on back, you hear?